Imagine growing up believing that your father was a hero, only to one day hear him called a murderer and see him tried for his crimes. This was the reality for many children of National Socialist leaders. Edda Göring, daughter of Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, grew up surrounded by luxury and power. However, after the fall of the Third Reich, her life changed drastically. Despite her father's death sentence, Edda maintained an affectionate view of her father, considering him a hero and a loving paternal figure. Similarly, Gudrun Himmler, daughter of the Reichsführer of the SS, spent her life defending her father's name. Both she and her father deeply loved Germany, and Gudrun, fervently dedicated to clearing his legacy, refused to accept the atrocities of the SS. Wolf Rüdiger Hess, son of Rudolf Hess, lived under the shadow of his father's perpetual imprisonment in Spandau. Wolf Rüdiger dedicated much of his life to trying to prove his father's innocence and to advocate for his release, considering Rudolf Hess a victim of the Allied judicial system. Heirs of the Reich, the shocking reality of the children of Nazi leaders. During the height of the Third Reich, these children lived lives of privilege in opulent halls of power, shielded from the horrors their fathers orchestrated. They played on vast estates, attended exclusive schools, and enjoyed the adoration of a nation. However, as the Reich crumbled, so did their world of illusions. In the vast grounds of Carinhal, the luxurious estate of Hermann Göring, the childhood of young Edda Göring unfolded like a fairy tale. Surrounded by vast natural reserves, she enjoyed unimaginable luxuries, including a collection of rare animals and even a personal miniature railway. Such extravagances were not unusual among the children of high-ranking National Socialist officials, who lived lives far removed from the average German citizen. Heinrich Himmler's daughter, Gudrun, accompanied her father on visits to concentration camps, although her experiences were carefully curated. In Dachau, she was shown sanitized areas such as gardens and prisoner artwork, leading her to note in her diary, "We saw everything we could. It was very nice." Gudrun Himmler, described as the perfect image of the Aryan girl, patriotic and always dressed in Bavarian clothes, embodied the ideal the regime sought to cultivate. Within this exclusive world, the children of Nazi leaders often found themselves in close proximity to Adolf Hitler himself. The Führer was not just a distant authority figure, but often played an intimate role in their lives. Edda Göring's christening, with Hitler as her godfather, exemplified the interconnection of personal relationships and political power that characterized this inner circle. The environment in which these children were raised was meticulously controlled, designed to reinforce Nazi ideologies at every turn. They celebrated milestones and holidays in the company of high officials, received gifts from Hitler, and were constantly exposed to carefully crafted propaganda. Despite the atrocities committed beyond their gilded cages, many of these children maintained loving relationships with their infamous fathers. Edda Göring, even years later, spoke affectionately of her father, saying, "I loved him very much, and it was evident how much he loved me." This disconnect between personal experience and historical reality would haunt many of these children for decades. As the Third Reich extended its reign of terror across Europe, the children of its architects remained ensconced in a world of privilege and false narratives. Their daily lives continued in stark contrast to the suffering inflicted by their fathers, creating a cognitive dissonance that would be difficult to reconcile in the years following Germany's defeat. Gudrun Himmler, unwavering loyalty to the Reichsführer. Born on August 8, 1929, Gudrun was the only daughter of the Reichsführer of the SS. From an early age, she enjoyed a privileged position within the Nazi hierarchy, often accompanying her father to official functions and maintaining close contact through daily phone calls and weekly letters. The bond between father and daughter was exceptionally strong. Heinrich Himmler showed particular affection for Gudrun, affectionately calling her Puppy and frequently flying her from Munich to his offices in Berlin. This closeness, however, came at a terrible cost, as it exposed young Gudrun to the inner workings of the regime and its horrendous ideology. Perhaps the most chilling example of this exposure occurred when Gudrun, at the tender age of 12, visited the Dachau concentration camp with her father. Her diary entry from that day reveals a disturbing disconnection from the reality of the camp's purpose. "Today we went to the SS concentration camp in Dachau. We saw everything we could. We saw the gardening work, we saw the pear trees, we saw all the paintings made by the prisoners. Wonderful. And then we ate a lot. It was very nice." The aftermath of World War II brought significant challenges for Gudrun and her mother. American forces detained them for 4 years, holding them in various camps across Italy, France, and Germany. They were even called to Nuremberg to testify at the trials before being released in November 1946. Despite these hardships and overwhelming evidence of her father's crimes, Gudrun's loyalty never wavered. Gudrun Himmler, born from Heinrich Himmler's only marriage, spent 5 long years with her mother in one of the prisoner camps set up by the British Army in their occupation zone in Germany. After her release, barely in her 20s, she joined the clandestine organization Stille Hilfe, aimed at aiding former SS members. Gudrun helped notorious war criminals like Klaus Barbie and Anton Maloth, demonstrating her continued adherence to National Socialist ideals. As the leader of the group, she strove to secure a ban on extradition from Germany for Klaas Karel Faber, 89, a former SS member in the Netherlands guilty of the murder of several Jews. She also supported Søren Kam, a former SS officer in Denmark, wanted by Danish authorities for war crimes, including the execution of a newspaper editor in Copenhagen. In 1951, Gudrun married Wolf-Dieter Burwitz, an official of the far-right National Democratic Party of Germany, adopting his surname and leaving Himmler behind. Despite the infamy associated with her surname, Gudrun did not hide her identity. She proudly wore a silver brooch her father had given her, depicting the heads of 4 horses arranged in the shape of a swastika. Himmler, her father, was convicted of high treason due to his attempt to negotiate a separate peace with the Western Allies. He ended up fleeing disguised as a non-commissioned officer, only to be discovered by the British and committed suicide during one of their interrogations. For Gudrun, however, it was all a sham, maintaining that her father had been murdered. Gudrun Burwitz lived in Munich with her husband and led a life dedicated to the National Socialist cause, without regrets and with unwavering loyalty to her father's memory. Her dedication to the cause did not go unnoticed in neo-Nazi circles, where she became a revered figure often referred to as a Nazi princess. She regularly attended clandestine meetings of former SS officers, maintaining connections with those who once fought for Germany. Until her death in 2018 at the age of 88, Gudrun Himmler continued to reside in Munich, a living testament to the enduring legacy of Nazi ideology and the complex psychological impact it had on the children of its leaders. Despite her refusal to talk about her work with British journalists, her personal life reflected her political convictions and her active participation in right-wing political circles throughout her life. The Heydrich children, Aryan heritage and family fate. Lena Heydrich gave birth to 2 sons, Klaus, born June 17, 1933, and Heide, born December 23, 1934. In the late 1930s, Reinhard Heydrich's obligations led him to work long hours and frequently be away from home. This left Lena in charge of the household and children, straining their marriage nearly to the point of separation. However, the Heydrich couple had another child, a girl named Silke, born April 9, 1939. Reinhard proudly showed off his newborn daughter, and they maintained a close relationship. Their 4th child, a girl named Marta, born July 23, 1942, was born shortly after Reinhard Heydrich's death. Their world was one of vast estates, lavish parties, and the adoration of a regime that saw their father as the pinnacle of the Aryan ideal. The idyllic facade of the Heydrich family's life shattered on May 27, 1942, when Czech resistance fighters ambushed Reinhard Heydrich's car in Prague. Immediately after the attack, Reinhard Heydrich was transported to Bulovka Hospital, which was cordoned off by armed SS men. Upon arrival at the health center, fearing that Czech doctors wanted to kill him, he ordered that only German professionals attend to him, causing a long wait for Heinrich Himmler to arrive with his medical team. According to the official report from the specialists, the wounds were not fatal, and his condition even improved for several days. However, against all odds, after a week, Heydrich's condition worsened due to an X-ray revealing horsehair remnants from the car seat inside his wound, slowly causing septicemia. Unable to save his life, Heydrich died on June 4, 1942, at the age of 38. As the Third Reich crumbled around them, Heydrich's children faced a new, harsh reality. Their father, once hailed as a National Socialist hero, was now despised as one of history's greatest monsters. The family fled their home near Prague, seeking refuge in the chaos of post-war Germany. It was during this tumultuous period that tragedy struck again, claiming the life of young Klaus Heydrich. Tragedy struck the family again when Klaus died in a car accident on October 24, 1943. That day, Klaus was cycling with his brother Haida in the courtyard of Panensky Brezhany Castle. Seeing the gate leading to the street open, Klaus ventured onto the road, where he was hit by a small truck descending the path. Klaus died from his injuries shortly after, and his body was buried in the estate garden. As the magnitude of Nazi atrocities came to light, Heydrich's surviving children withdrew further from public view. Haida, Zilke, and Marta, along with their mother Lena, sought anonymity after Germany's defeat. They settled on the island of Fehmarn, far from the power centers where their name once inspired fear and respect. In the decades that followed, Heydrich's children chose a life of deliberate obscurity. Haida Heydrich, now a retired engineer, firmly refused to discuss his father's role in the Nazi regime. During a rare visit to his childhood home in Panensky Brezhany, he expressed a complex mix of nostalgia and understanding, acknowledging the weight of his family's history while maintaining a respectful distance from it. Marta Heydrich, born shortly after her father's death, forged a quiet life in Fehmarn, running a fashion store far removed from politics and historical reckoning. Zilke Heydrich, once proudly displayed by her father as the image of Aryan perfection, faded into the background, her post-war life shrouded in mystery. Edda Göring, the Reichsmarschall's princess. On the extensive Karenhol estate, named in honor of Hermann Göring's first wife, young Edda lived a life far removed from the realities of war-torn Europe. Affectionately known as Kleine Prinzessin, Little Princess, she was showered with attention and gifts fit for royalty. The christening of this Nazi heiress was no ordinary event. The Führer himself stood as her godfather. Edda's childhood unfolded in a setting of stolen artworks and ill-gotten wealth. Her father, infamous for his role in the systematic looting of occupied territories, gifted his daughter treasures that would make museum curators weep. Among these stolen artifacts was Lucas Cranach, the elder's Madonna and Child, an invaluable masterpiece that became a plaything for a girl unaware of its true value and dark origins. As Allied bombs rained down on German cities and the tide of war turned against the Nazi regime, Edda and her mother sought refuge in the relative safety of Obersalzberg near Berchtesgaden. This mountainous retreat, once a symbol of Nazi power, became a gilded cage as the Reich crumbled around them. After Germany's defeat, Edda and her mother found themselves interned by American forces at the Hotel Palace in Luxembourg, a stark contrast to the luxurious surroundings they once called home. The Nuremberg trials cast a long shadow over Edda's adolescence. While her father faced trial for his role in the Nazi regime's atrocities, she made frequent visits to his prison cell. These moments, indelibly etched in her memory, shaped her perception of her father for decades. Even as the world condemned Hermann Göring as a war criminal, Edda clung to the image of a loving and attentive father. The fall from grace was steep and relentless. After her father's suicide on the eve of his scheduled execution, Edda and her mother were thrust into a life of unimaginable hardships in their previous existence. They found themselves living in a cabin without basic amenities such as electricity and running water. This period of austerity eventually gave way to a more stable life in Munich, where Edda pursued legal studies, perhaps seeking to understand the legal framework that had condemned her father. Throughout her adult life, Edda Göring maintained a complex relationship with her father's legacy. In private conversations, she staunchly defended Hermann Göring, refusing to acknowledge the monstrous nature of his actions. In a 1991 interview, she revealed the depth of her emotional connection, stating, "I loved him very much, and it was evident how much he loved me. My only memories of him are so loving, I cannot see him any other way." In 2015, at the age of 76, Edda petitioned the Bavarian State Parliament for the return of confiscated property from her father's estate after the war. This bold request was swiftly and unanimously rejected, a clear indication that Germany had no intention of entertaining any claims related to National Socialist leaders. She passed away in 2018 at the age of 80, allegedly buried in an unmarked grave, a final and silent epilogue to a life that began amid the thunder of Nazi power and ended in the low tones of historical infamy. Wolf Rüdiger Hess, defender of his father's honor. Among these unwavering defenders was Wolf Rüdiger Hess, the son of Hitler's former deputy, Rudolf Hess. His steadfast loyalty to his father's memory would shape his life, leading him down a path of controversy and unyielding dedication. Born in 1937, Wolf Rüdiger Hess was only a child when his father made the fateful decision to fly solo to Scotland in 1941, ostensibly to negotiate peace with Britain. This ill-fated mission resulted in Rudolf Hess's immediate arrest and subsequent imprisonment, casting a long shadow over the young Wolf's childhood. The Nazi regime, quick to distance itself from Hess's actions, denounced him as mentally unstable, further complicating Wolf's understanding of his father's role in history. In the tumultuous period following World War II, Wolf and his mother found themselves adrift in a changed world. The family's fall from grace was swift and merciless. On June 3, 1947, Ilse Hess was arrested and interned, leaving the young Wolf in the care of his aunt. As Wolf Rüdiger Hess reached adulthood, he chose a career that seemed far removed from the political turmoil of his childhood. In 1961, he became an architect, establishing himself in a profession centered on creation rather than the destruction wrought by his father's regime. Wolf's crusade to clear his father's name took many forms over the years. He authored 3 books dedicated to presenting his version of Rudolf Hess's history: My Father Rudolf Hess, Who Murdered My Father, Rudolf Hess, and Rudolf Hess, I Regret Nothing. These works served both as personal catharsis and public propaganda, challenging the accepted historical narrative surrounding his father's actions and imprisonment. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of Wolf's campaign was his unwavering belief that his father did not commit suicide in Spandau prison in 1987, as officially reported. Instead, he clung to the notion that the British Secret Intelligence Service orchestrated Rudolf Hess's death. In the 1950s, Wolf's dedication to his father's cause took a more organized form with the establishment of the Committee to Free Rudolf Hess. This initiative attracted the support of hundreds of thousands of individuals, including some prominent figures in German politics. The committee's efforts to secure Rudolf Hess's release from Spandau prison proved unsuccessful, but served to keep the controversial figure in public consciousness. As the years passed, Wolf Rüdiger Hess's commitment to his father's memory showed no signs of waning. He became a fixture at neo-Nazi gatherings, organizing the annual Rudolf Hess Memorial March. These events brought together those who shared Wolf's revisionist view of history, providing a platform for perpetuating Nazi ideologies long after the Third Reich's fall. Wolf Rüdiger Hess's lifelong crusade ended on October 24, 2001, when he succumbed to a stroke at the age of 63. His passing marked the end of an era, closing the chapter on one of the most vocal and persistent defenders of a high-ranking Nazi official. Until the end, Wolf remained committed to his father's memory. Monika Hertwig, confronting the dark truth. While some children of Nazi leaders remained in denial, others embarked on a painful journey to confront the truth about their parents' actions. Such was the case with Monika Hertwig, the daughter of Hermann Göring, the notorious SS officer who oversaw the Plazow concentration camp in Poland. Hertwig's path to understanding her father's crimes was paved with shock, disbelief, and ultimately a determination to face the darkest aspects of her family's history. Born in 1945, Monika was only a year old when her father was executed for his war crimes. Throughout her childhood, she was shielded from the horrific reality of her father's actions. Her mother, perhaps in an attempt to protect her daughter, or to deny the truth herself, painted a very different picture of Hermann Göring. She told young Monica that her father was a good man at heart who had not wanted to do anything wrong. This narrative, though false, formed the foundation of Monica's understanding of her father for decades. The turning point in Monica's life came in 1993 with the release of Steven Spielberg's critically acclaimed film, Schindler's List. The movie depicted Hermann Göring as a sadistic, murderous camp commandant, a portrayal that starkly contrasted with the image Monica had held of her father. Sitting in the darkness of the theatre, Monica faced a brutal reality she had never known. The experience was viscerally overwhelming, making her physically ill as she grappled with the enormity of her father's crimes. In her quest for truth, Monica Hertwig took the extraordinary step of reaching out to those who had suffered at her father's hands. In 2008, she participated in a documentary titled Inheritance, which chronicled her meeting with Helen Jonas, a woman who had been forced to work in Goethe's household as a teenager. During the filming of Inheritance, Monica expressed the transformative nature of her journey, stating, "For Helen, it's a moment of closure, but it was not closure for me. I think it was the beginning of another life, a life in which I can live the truth." Monica's efforts to address her father's crimes did not end with the documentary. She continued to engage in Holocaust remembrance projects, using her unique perspective as the daughter of a perpetrator to contribute to discussions on guilt, responsibility, and reconciliation. Her willingness to confront the truth and speak openly about her father's actions starkly contrasted with those who chose to deny or minimize the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. Now in her 70s, Monica Hertwig continues to grapple with the weight of her father's actions. Her journey from ignorance to awareness and finally to active engagement with the truth serves as a powerful testament to the importance of confronting historical atrocities, no matter how painful the process may be. Through her efforts, Monica has not only come to terms with her family's history, but has also contributed to the broader conversation about the lasting impact of the Holocaust on subsequent generations. Nicholas Frank, the relentless public denouncer. Born in 1939, Nicholas Frank grew up in the shadow of the Third Reich's power. His father, Hans Frank, held a position of immense authority and brutality, earning the chilling moniker the Butcher of Poland for his role in the systematic destruction of Polish Jews and intellectuals. Unlike many children of Nazi leaders who opted for silence or denial, Nicholas Frank embarked on a lifelong mission to confront and expose his father's atrocities. This journey of reckoning began in earnest during his career as a journalist for Playboy Germany and the weekly magazine Stern. Through his work, Nicholas delved into the dark corners of his family's history, unearthing painful truths that would shape his life's purpose. In 1987, Nicholas Frank published his most controversial and impactful work, Der Vater eine Abrechnung, The Father, a Reckoning. This scathing memoir exposed the monstrous nature of Hans Frank, presenting a fierce indictment of both his father and the Nazi regime. Nicholas Frank's public denunciation of his father did not stop with the written word. He took his message to the stage, writing a play titled Der Vater, which premiered in 1995. In this theatrical piece, Nicholas imagined a grotesque scenario in which he exhumed his father's corpse, demanding answers for the unimaginable crimes committed during the war. The intensity of Nicholas Frank's feelings towards his father became even more evident in a 2020 interview with Al Jazeera. Reflecting on Hans Frank's execution following the Nuremberg trials, Nicholas stated, "I am against the death penalty, but I am happy that my father experienced the fear of death he inflicted on so many innocent people." Throughout his career, Nicholas Frank continued to explore the dark corners of his family's history. He authored additional books including My German Mother in 2005 and Brother Norman. In 2013, further examining the roles his mother and older brother played in the Nazi regime. Nicholas Frank's relentless pursuit of truth and accountability has made him a unique and controversial figure in discussions about the Nazi legacy and historical memory. His willingness to publicly condemn his father and confront the horrors of the Holocaust starkly contrasts with the silence or defensiveness exhibited by many other children of Nazi leaders. Through his books, lectures, and media appearances, Nicholas has become a powerful voice in the ongoing effort to educate new generations about the dangers of fascism and the importance of facing historical atrocities. Rolf Mangala, confronting the Angel of Death. Born on March 16, 1944, Rolf Mangala spent his early years unaware of his father's atrocious acts. The young boy was raised in a carefully constructed lie, led to believe that his absent father was a war hero who had made great sacrifices for his country. This facade of noble patriotism shielded Rolf from the horrifying truth lurking just beneath the surface of his family's history. As Rolf entered adolescence, the protective veil of misinformation began to unravel. The shocking reality of his father's identity and the monstrous acts committed in the name of Nazi ideology started to come to light. The burden of bearing the Mangala name weighed heavily on Rolf. Despite the horrors associated with his father's actions, he found it impossible to completely sever the emotional ties of familial bond. This internal conflict would haunt Rolf for years as he struggled to reconcile the loving father he'd imagined with the brutal reality of Josef Mengele's crimes against humanity. In an attempt to distance himself from his infamous lineage, Rolf made conscious efforts to lead a normal life. He pursued a career in law, eventually becoming a successful corporate lawyer. However, the shadow of Josef Mengele's crimes continued to haunt Rolf's life. Nazi hunters, relentless in their pursuit of justice, viewed the young Mangala as a potential link to his father's whereabouts. The turning point in Rolf's journey came in 1977, when he made the fateful decision to confront his father directly. Traveling to South America, where Josef Mengele had fled to escape justice, Rolf found himself face to face with the man behind the monstrous legends. What he found was not a repentant soul seeking forgiveness, but an unrepentant Nazi attempting to justify his actions at Auschwitz. Reflecting on this chilling encounter, Rolf admitted the profound impact it had on him. He could not fathom how his father could have committed such atrocities, stating, "What happened is for me contrary to all ethics, to all morality, and prevents all understanding of human nature." Despite his disgust for his father's actions and everything he stood for, Rolf found himself in an impossible position. He could not betray his father to the authorities, choosing instead to remain silent about Josef Mengele's hideout in South America. After this life-changing encounter, Rolf decided to further distance himself from his father's legacy. He changed his last name to his mother's, a symbolic act of breaking away from the Mangala name and all it represented. This change marked a new chapter in Rolf's life, one focused on moving forward while acknowledging the weight of the past. Albert Speer Jr., the son of Hitler's architect, and his quest for redemption. The relationship between Albert Speer Jr. and his father was far from typical. As Hitler's preferred architect and later a key member of the Nazi inner circle, the elder Speer had little time for family life. In a 2010 interview with Süddeutsche Zeitung, Albert Jr. revealed the distant nature of their relationship, stating, "He wasn't the kind of father who checked your homework." This emotional detachment would later serve as the foundation for Albert Jr.'s efforts to separate himself from his father's notorious legacy. As the Third Reich crumbled, and his father faced trial at Nuremberg, young Albert found himself in a world where his surname was synonymous with Nazi atrocities. Rather than succumbing to the weight of this legacy, he made a conscious decision to forge his own path. Like his father, Albert Jr. pursued a career in architecture, but he was emphatic that this choice was his own. "I have tried my whole life to distance myself from my father," he would later explain, emphasizing his desire for an independent identity. Throughout his career, Albert Speer Jr. deliberately avoided public discussions about his father's role in the Nazi regime. Instead, he focused on establishing himself as a respected architect and urban planner in his own right. His professional achievements were significant, including the design of Shanghai's International Automobile City and overseeing the design for the Beijing Olympics. In 1977, Albert Speer Jr. achieved a significant milestone in his career when he became a professor of urban planning at the University of Kaiserslautern in Rhineland-Palatinate. When Albert Speer Jr. passed away on September 15, 2017, at the age of 83, he left behind a legacy markedly different from his father's, one built on personal achievements and a deliberate separation from the shadows of the Third Reich. Martin Bormann Jr., From Nazi's Son to Priest. While some children of Nazi leaders clung to denial or faced painful truths, one man embarked on a remarkable journey of transformation. Martin Bormann Jr., the son of Hitler's powerful private secretary, would travel a path from the heart of the Third Reich to the sanctity of the Catholic priesthood. Born on April 14, 1930, Martin Bormann Jr. entered a world of privilege and power. As the eldest son of Martin Bormann, one of Hitler's most trusted lieutenants, young Martin was baptized with the Führer himself as his godfather. In the closed realm of Nazi leadership, the Bormann children led lives far removed from the harsh realities their father helped orchestrate across Europe. Unlike some of his contemporaries who chose denial or defensiveness, Martin embarked on a spiritual journey that would lead him to the Catholic Church. In a profound act of renunciation, he dedicated his life to God's service, seeking redemption for his father's actions. On July 26, 1958, Martin Bormann Jr. was ordained as a Catholic priest. This transformation from the son of a Nazi to a man of the cloth represented a strong rejection of his father's ideology and a commitment to a life of service. From 1961 to 1964, he worked as a missionary in the Congo, ministering to the needy and spreading a message of love and compassion that directly contradicted the hateful doctrines of his youth. However, even as he sought to atone for his father's actions, Martin Bormann Jr. found himself entangled in a complex web of emotions. In a poignant statement made in 2000, he revealed the internal struggle that continued to haunt him. "I love him as my father, and I hope that I can meet him as a redeemed and saved man. But I cannot absolve him of any of the guilt he brought upon himself in his political life by following Adolf Hitler. I cannot do that." Throughout his life, Martin Bormann Jr. dedicated himself to efforts of reconciliation and atonement. He participated in Holocaust remembrance projects, using his unique perspective as the son of a high-ranking Nazi to contribute to discussions on guilt, responsibility, and the possibility of redemption. However, Martin Bormann Jr.'s journey toward redemption was not without controversy. In 2011, shocking allegations emerged about his time at a monastery boarding school in Salzburg in the early 1960s. A former pupil claimed that Bormann had mistreated him when he was only 12 years old. Other accusations of severe physical mistreatment against other students cast a shadow over Bormann's attempts at atonement. At the time the allegations surfaced, Bormann was battling dementia, rendering him unwilling or unable to address the claims against him. The independent Klasnik Commission awarded compensation to the accuser, but the allegations never led to legal action. The story of Martin Bormann Jr. serves as a stark reminder of the enduring repercussions of the Nazi regime, not only on its victims, but also on the families of its perpetrators. His journey from the son of a high-ranking Nazi official to a Catholic priest, from a life of privilege to one of service, illustrates the complex ways in which the children of Nazi leaders sought to distance themselves from their parents' actions and forge new identities in the post-war context. The next generation, the grandchildren of Nazi leaders, and their legacy. The experiences of the grandchildren of Nazis varied widely, reflecting the diverse ways their families chose to confront or conceal their dark history. Some, like Gudrun Himmler, granddaughter of Heinrich Himmler's brother, chose to face their family's past head-on. She embarked on a journey of research and self-discovery, culminating in the publication of The Himmler Brothers, A German Family History. Her work sought to shed light on the broader implications of her family's Nazi connections, offering a unique perspective on the lasting impact of the regime's ideology. One of the most impactful stories of Nazi grandchildren is that of Jacqueline, a researcher who dedicated her life to uncovering and denouncing her grandfather, Robert Guise's crimes. When her father died last year, she inherited the mission to make public the truth about the horrors her grandfather had committed. She took on the task with unwavering determination, aware of the importance of keeping memory and truth alive. "I cannot avenge these crimes. I cannot free my father from the ghosts that haunted him. But I can keep the memory alive and reveal the truth about the crimes committed by my grandfather. These have been covered up for too long and have never been condemned." Robert Guise, born in Cologne, Germany in 1902, was a lawyer who early joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party. His ambition led him to join the Schutzstaffel, SS, and serve in the intelligence service under the direction of Reinhard Heydrich and as personal advisor to Karl Hermann Frank in occupied Czechoslovakia. Gies was responsible for executing atrocious orders, including the infamous Lidice massacre, where all men over 16 were shot and women and children deported. Jacqueline recounted with genuine pain how her grandfather never showed remorse for his crimes. Even after the war, Gies hid under a false identity and evaded justice, living the rest of his days in freedom. Through her research, Jacqueline discovered the depth of her grandfather's crimes and decided it was her duty to make this story public to ensure it was never forgotten. In her words, the shame and guilt of being the granddaughter of a Nazi perpetrator became her life's mission. Jacqueline lectured in Germany, writing and speaking about her grandfather's crimes, hoping that by sharing her story, future generations would learn and prevent such atrocities from happening again. Her journey culminated in 2012 when she visited the Ravensbrück Memorial Site to honor the 70th anniversary of Lidice's destruction. There, she publicly admitted to being Robert Gies's granddaughter, expressing her shame and commitment to transmitting the truth so that the horrors of the past would not be repeated. Jacqueline's story is a moving testament to the power of memory and the importance of confronting the past, no matter how painful, to build a more just future. Ricardo Eichmann, son of Adolf Eichmann, rejected his father's ideology and chose a life away from the public eye. His statement, "Running from the last name doesn't change anything. It's impossible to escape our past. But we can be better," encapsulates the complex emotions many Nazi grandchildren struggle with. The recognition that one cannot escape their past, combined with the determination to be better, became a driving force for many in this generation. The role of the grandchildren of Nazis in shaping the narrative of their infamous ancestors has been both controversial and enlightening. Their unique perspective offers glimpses into the human side of historical monsters, challenging simplistic notions of evil and forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths about complicity and redemption. As time moves forward and the last survivors of the Nazi era pass away, the testimonies of these grandchildren become more significant. They serve as a bridge between the past and the present, offering a nuanced understanding of one of the darkest chapters in history. Their stories remind us that the legacy of the Third Reich continues to cast a long shadow, affecting generations removed from the original events and challenging our understanding of guilt, responsibility, and the possibility of redemption in the face of unspeakable crimes. Raina Hos, breaking the cycle of darkness. Among those who dared to break free from the shadows of the past was Raina Hos, the grandson of one of history's most infamous figures. Raina Hos grew up under the long shadow cast by his grandfather, Rudolf Hess, the notorious commandant of Auschwitz. For years, young Raina remained blissfully unaware of the true nature of his family's past. The harsh light of reality pierced this veil of ignorance during a school trip to the Dachau concentration camp. As Raina stood before a plaque listing the names of Nazi war criminals, he came face to face with a chilling revelation, his own surname staring back at him from the infamous roster. The Hos family, like many others with ties to the Nazi regime, had chosen to bury the past rather than confront its horrors. However, Raina found himself unable to turn away from the truth once it had been revealed. In a bold and courageous move, Raina Hos decided to distance himself from his family's Nazi past. He broke ties with relatives who continued to cling to poisonous ideologies and embarked on a mission to confront the legacy of his grandfather's crimes head-on. Raina's work in Holocaust education took him to the very sites where his grandfather had orchestrated unimaginable atrocities. He spoke with survivors, listened to their stories, and witnessed the enduring trauma inflicted by the Nazi regime. One of the most poignant aspects of Raina's journey was his effort to help return stolen possessions to the descendants of Holocaust survivors. This work brought him face to face with the human cost of his grandfather's actions as he confronted the tangible evidence of shattered lives and broken families. Each item returned, each story shared, served as a powerful reminder of the immense responsibility he bore as the grandson of Rudolf Hess. However, Raina's path to redemption was not without challenges and controversies. In 2016, allegations of fraud cast a shadow over his work and motivations. The accusations centered on his failure to fund a promised Holocaust film, using the money instead to pay personal debts. Raina found himself facing legal consequences, with 18 convictions over 20 years, 15 of which were for fraud, according to the Irish Times. Lives in the shadows, the silent descendants of Nazis. While some children of Nazi leaders chose to confront their families' dark legacies head-on, others took the difficult path of disappearing into the shadows of anonymity. These silent children, burdened with the weight of their infamous surnames, sought refuge in new identities and carefully guarded secrets. In the years following World War II, as the magnitude of Nazi atrocities came to light, many descendants of high-ranking officials found themselves caught between loyalty to their parents and horror at their crimes. For some, the only viable path forward was to sever all ties with their past and forge completely new identities. One such story is that of Bridget Hos, daughter of Rudolf Hess, the infamous commandant of Auschwitz. For decades, Bridget lived a double life, her true identity known to only a select few. She moved to Spain, reinventing herself as a milliner, and later working as a model for renowned fashion designer Cristobal Balenciaga. Eventually, she relocated to the United States, where she continued to fiercely protect her secret. The psychological impact of living with a hidden identity was profound. Brigitte, like many others in her position, lived in constant fear of exposure. Every interaction carried the potential for disaster, every new acquaintance a possible risk to the carefully constructed facade. Despite the passage of time, the shadows of the past remained ever present. Bridget Hos maintained her silence for decades, even hiding her true identity from her own children and grandchildren. Only in the twilight of her life, facing a terminal diagnosis at the age of 80, did she finally break her silence in a single interview. In her rare interview, Brigitte painted a picture of Auschwitz as a paradise, revealing a disturbing disconnect from the reality of the death camp's horrors. She spoke of her father as a sensitive and loving man, completely separate from his role as the architect of mass murder. This cognitive dissonance, this inability to fully acknowledge the true nature of her father's crimes, perhaps explains why she chose a life of secrecy rather than an open confrontation with the past. The psychological impact of living with a hidden identity extended far beyond the individual. Spouses and children, often unaware of their family's true history, found themselves unwitting participants in this grand deception. When the truth finally came to light, as it sometimes did, the revelation could tear families apart and destroy relationships built on a foundation of lies. Harold Quant, A Life of Prosperity and Legacy. Born in 1921 to Magda Goebbels and her first husband Günther Quant, Harold found himself in a unique position within the Nazi hierarchy. As the stepson of one of Hitler's most trusted lieutenants, he witnessed the rise and fall of the Third Reich from a vantage point few could imagine. However, fate had a different plan for Harold, one that would see him survive the war and thrive in its aftermath. In the final days of the Nazi regime, as Berlin crumbled under Allied bombardment, Harold's mother made a decision that would forever haunt the annals of history. Magda Goebbels, in a chilling act of fanaticism, poisoned her 6 young children alongside Joseph Goebbels before taking their own lives. Harold, serving in the Luftwaffe at the time, was spared this grim fate. He would emerge as the sole survivor of the Goebbels family, a twist of fate that set him apart from his half-siblings. As the dust settled over the ruins of Nazi Germany, Harold Quant found himself a prisoner of war, held by Allied forces until 1947. Upon his release, Harold wasted no time in distancing himself from the Nazi regime. He reconnected with his biological father's industrial empire, stepping into a world of business and finance that offered a stark contrast to the ideological fervor of his youth. The Quant family's extensive holdings, including significant stakes in the automotive industry, provided Harold with a foundation upon which to build his own fortune. In the years that followed, Harold Quant displayed a business acumen that would have been the envy of many of his contemporaries. Alongside his half-brother Herbert, he inherited a substantial portion of his father's industrial empire. This inheritance included a significant share in what would become one of Germany's most iconic brands, BMW. Under Harold and Herbert's leadership, BMW transformed from a struggling manufacturer into a global automotive powerhouse. Harold's business success extended far beyond the automotive sector. He diversified his holdings, investing in chemical companies, engineering firms, and a wide range of industrial enterprises. His ability to navigate the complex landscape of post-war German industry propelled him to the upper echelons of the country's economic elite. Despite his financial success, Harold Quant remained a figure shrouded in mystery. He rarely spoke of his stepfather or his experiences during the Third Reich, preferring to focus on his business and philanthropic endeavors. This silence about his family's infamous past has led to much speculation about Harold's true feelings towards the Nazi regime and his stepfather's role in its atrocities. Some have interpreted his reticence as a tacit acknowledgement of the horrors perpetrated by the Goebbels and Nazi leadership. Others have seen it as a calculated move to protect his business interests and social standing in post-war Germany. Harold's life came to an abrupt end in 1967 when he died in a plane crash in Italy. At the time of his death, he had amassed a fortune that placed him among Germany's wealthiest individuals. Manfred Rommel, from Field Marshal's son to mayor. While some children of Nazi leaders struggled to escape their families' infamous legacies, others found unexpected paths to redemption and public service. Among these was Manfred Rommel, the son of the legendary Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Manfred managed to forge a successful political career in post-war Germany, becoming a respected figure in his own right. Born in 1928, Manfred Rommel grew up in the shadow of his father's military achievements. As a child, he witnessed his father's rise to prominence within the Wehrmacht, becoming one of Hitler's most celebrated generals. Despite Erwin Rommel's high position in the Nazi hierarchy, Manfred later described a complex relationship with his father, one not defined by Nazi ideology. In the final days of World War II, as Allied forces closed in on Germany, young Manfred experienced a personal tragedy that would shape the course of his life. His father, implicated in the July 20th plot to assassinate Hitler, was forced to commit suicide to protect his family from Nazi reprisals. After the war, Manfred Rommel found himself navigating a drastically altered landscape. The Rommel name, once synonymous with military prowess, now carried the weight of association with the defeated Nazi regime. However, unlike many children of high-ranking Nazi officials who retreated into obscurity or denial, Manfred chose a different path. Driven by a desire to contribute to the rebuilding and redemption of post-war Germany, Manfred Rommel entered the world of politics. His journey from being the son of a Nazi general to a respected political figure was marked by a commitment to democratic values and international reconciliation. In 1974, Manfred achieved a significant milestone when he was elected mayor of Stuttgart, a position he would hold for more than 2 decades. As mayor, Manfred Rommel was known for his liberal policies and efforts to promote understanding between different communities. He became known for his work in integrating immigrants into German society and his unwavering support for the Jewish community. These actions stood in stark contrast to the ideologies his father had fought to uphold, marking a profound shift in the Rommel legacy. Manfred's commitment to international reconciliation extended beyond Stuttgart's borders. He worked tirelessly to mend relations between Germany and its former wartime adversaries, becoming a vocal advocate for tolerance and human rights. His efforts did not go unnoticed, earning him widespread recognition and numerous awards for his dedication to public service and international understanding. In a poignant reflection on his life's work, Manfred Rommel was quoted saying, "We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools." Manfred Rommel's journey from the son of a Nazi field marshal to a respected mayor and advocate for peace serves as a powerful example of personal transformation and redemption. His story illustrates the complex legacy of the Nazi era and the varied paths taken by the children of its leaders. Through his actions and words, Manfred Rommel not only distanced himself from his father's controversial past, but also contributed significantly to post-war Germany's healing and international reconciliation. The tragedy of the Goebbels, the story of a fallen lineage. While some Nazi children survived to grapple with their family's legacy, Others met a far more sinister fate. In the final days of the Third Reich, as Berlin crumbled under Soviet bombardment, a chilling tragedy unfolded in the dark corridors of Hitler's underground bunker. The 6 young children of Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, became unwitting victims of their parents' fanatical devotion to the Nazi cause. The Goebbels family had led lives of unparalleled privilege during the height of Nazi power. Joseph and Magda Goebbels' children, Helga, Hildegard, Helmut, Holdine, Hedwig, and Heidrun, ranged in age from 4 to 12. They knew only luxury and adoration, shielded from the horrors their father helped orchestrate across Europe. But as the Reich collapsed around them, their parents made a decision that shocked even their most hardened contemporaries. In April 1945, as Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, the Goebbels family sought refuge in the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery's garden. The children, accustomed to sprawling estates and fresh air, found themselves confined to the claustrophobic underground complex. They spent their final days in this concrete tomb, listening to the distant rumble of artillery as the Red Army advanced. Several individuals, including Hitler's architect Albert Speer, offered to evacuate the Goebbels children to safety. But Magda Goebbels, in a chilling display of ideological fervor, rejected all such offers. She and Joseph had resolved to die alongside their Führer, and in their twisted minds, their children could not live in a world without National Socialism. On May 1, 1945, with Soviet troops just blocks away, Joseph and Magda Goebbels set their horrific plan in motion. Rokas Misch, the bunker's telephone operator, recalled his last glimpse of the Goebbels children. The children were sitting around a table in their nightgowns, and Frau Goebbels was combing their hair. This seemingly tender domestic scene masked the unspeakable act about to unfold. Dr. Helmut Kuntz, an SS dentist, was summoned to the bunker. According to his later testimony, Magda Goebbels approached him to help kill her children. Although he initially refused, Kunz eventually agreed to sedate the children with morphine injections. Once the siblings were unconscious, Magda Goebbels and Dr. Ludwig Stumpfegger, Hitler's personal physician, crushed cyanide capsules in their mouths. In a final act of maternal depravity, Magda Goebbels arranged her children's lifeless bodies in their beds, carefully combing their hair and adorning the girls with bows. She left a letter to her eldest son, Harold Quant, attempting to justify her actions. The world that comes after the Führer and National Socialism is no longer worth living in, and so I have brought the children with me. On May 3, 1945, Soviet troops discovered the lifeless bodies of the 6 Goebbels children in the bunker, still dressed in their pajamas. The scene was so disturbing that even the most battle-hardened soldiers were horrified. A subsequent autopsy confirmed that the 6 children had died from cyanide poisoning. Joseph and Magda Goebbels committed suicide shortly after murdering their children, leaving a legacy of indescribable cruelty. The Goebbels family tragedy serves as a grim reminder of the depths of human depravity and the devastating consequences of unchecked fanaticism. These innocent children born into a world of Nazi privilege became the final victims of their parents' twisted ideology, their lives extinguished in the last breaths of the Third Reich.